Chad, I want to drill down on what you were doing the last month or so, and as much specific as you can give us without revealing too much that could harm any future efforts that you might be involved in. We have, in my view, an untold number of Americans behind enemy lines who are effectively hostages. We have tens of thousands of these men you talked about and families you talked about that you fought with and fought next to you. You became brothers and fathers and so forth with each other, Afghans. I can only imagine what's going to happen to them. There is a resistance movement in the north, formerly really the Northern Alliance. They're getting no help whatsoever from the United States government. And the enemy, the Taliban and the rest of them, are using our weapons against them. And I suspect they're using Russian and Chinese intelligence to help them blow them out. So let's start from the beginning. I want you to explain to me what happened, what caused you to act, and from there, tell us what you did.
Yeah, so this actually, if I'm being honest, this started a little bit selfish for me. As I told you about my time in Afghanistan, I worked with an interpreter. I formerly in my books would have called him Bashir because it protected his identity, but now I could say his name's Aziz. Aziz and I worked really in a two-man team. So he wasn't just my interpreter, he was my teammate. When I got done with our operations, I didn't go back to base. I went to Aziz's home and was with his family, and we became very close. And over the years, and even after my 8 deployments of serving with him, we've stayed in touch. For 6 years, I've helped him with his SIV, Special Immigrant Visa process, which is a complete debacle. I don't think it's ever designed to successfully get people out of Afghanistan. We just went through paperwork and rejection. And I mean, this is a guy who's been polygraphed and special operations guys, saved my life on 3 occasions. I watched him save my friends' lives. Again, we've seen him polygraphed and him doing so many heroic things selflessly as a patriot for his country, to fight for a free Afghanistan, and to support America's efforts to defend people in America that he's never met before. Amazing human being. And I owed him a life debt. And I recognized that President Biden was given a deadline. This was going to fall apart. And so I kind of abandoned the SIV process. Congresswoman Vicky Hartzell out of Missouri was helping me with it, but I knew it wasn't going to happen in time. And so myself and Dan Stinson, a former teammate of mine who deployed with, we decided we were going to get Aziz and his family out.
And when was this about?
This was about 3 months ago.
Okay.
We had seen the writing on the wall. We said we have to get him out. And so we raised some money. We put about $150,000 aside. We started putting teammates together. And one of our teammates, as we got closer to this and we saw President Biden about a month ago, we saw what President Biden was going to do rapidly. We said, this is going to fall fast. Let's go in and get him out. One of our teammates that we had on said, hey, I just identified 3,000 orphans. If we're going to go get Aziz and his family out, let's get these orphans as well. And we recognize a bigger need than my selfish need to just get my teammate out. And we said, hey, we have the skills, we have the knowledge, and we have the relationships to pull this off. We started raising some more funds. We put a campaign out to collect information of SIV applicants through a portal to find out who was there and who needed help. And we had some relationships with the government of the United Arab Emirates, some personal relationship with the royal family. And we capitalized on those. We went there. We pled a case to the royal family and asked for their help. I couldn't say this until like a few days ago because they didn't want to be known. But they agreed to help us. And what they did was absolutely incredible on a humanity level. I mean, they provided us 5 generals to give us access to their military resources, an airfield to land and to take off and land charter flights on, all the military aircraft we needed and their pilots, a humanitarian center with 4,100 beds, and a place to set up a joint operations command center.
Wait a minute. So this is Qatar did this?
This is Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi. Yeah.
Yes,
Unbelievable.
And yeah, what they did for us was, really what made it possible for us to do this. We launched there. We set up a operations center there. We had teams in the U.S. to collect all this information, categorize who we were going to rescue, triage it, SIVs, American citizens, women who were vulnerable, Christians who would be persecuted, and these orphan children. And so we built target packages for rescue. We put people outside the wire, team members outside the wire of the HKA airport, had someone inside to work liaison with the military to land our flights.
So you had what are effectively military personnel, but not on the clock with the government. You had people with military backgrounds and other kinds of backgrounds in Kabul,
Yes.
outside the airport,
Yes.
outside the Taliban encirclement, trying to track and find people that you all had identified as needing to get out of there. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
And you had contacts inside the airport with the U.S. military as well, and you were able to get how many people from outside the airport into the airport?
We were responsible for 8,911, and then we assisted the State Department with another 3,000. So we kind of accounted for about 12,000 rescues that we were able to get out of Afghanistan. 8,911 of them ended up in Abu Dhabi at the humanitarian center that we were managing with the UAE.
All right, let me ask you this. How did you get these people from outside the airport into the airport? Are you able to tell me?
I'm able to tell you somewhat, and it changed rapidly. We had there were special gates that were not, you've seen in the news, like the Abbey Gate and the North Gate and all those gates. We had special gates with rat lines to those gates. We had military members on the inside that were able to open the gates for us and move them to a holding. We were given, because of our success, the military gave us a ramp and a holding area for our people. And the military there on the ground actually worked with us, and because we were moving so many people, they're like, okay, we're going to help you guys.
So let me ask you this, just because this is very, very intriguing and important. The military people who were making these decisions obviously weren't at the Pentagon, right? These were people, commanders and colonels, and so right there at the field level, right?
The great men and women of our military who was on the ground. And I'd like to circle back at the end. I hate using the word circle back now because it's been hijacked. But I'd love to go back and tell you kind of orchestrated how the State Department and the military worked, together in the discrepancies in that, major discrepancies in that. There were other times, though, that we were able to use some of the main gates with vehicles. So we had some buses in town that we commandeered, and we were able to put people on buses and drive them into the main gates in large groups. However, that became problematic because we never controlled the airport, despite what the White House said. The Taliban controlled the airport, because if you control the outer perimeter of anything, then you control that ground space. That's just simple military strategy to know that. And we allowed the Taliban to control the outer perimeter, to be checking blue passports, documents. In many cases, they were taking away people's paperwork and sending them away, or even physically harming them.
Well, how is it that the Taliban didn't stop you? It's because you picked different times of the day. You had a gate that wasn't really publicly identified, or various gates and so forth. So you worked your way around their blocking effort?
Yeah, so the Taliban were really focused on the checkpoints they were focused on, were the major routes of traffic. Kabul airport, HK airport is very, very large. You're talking miles of area. And so they didn't control the whole space around it. It wasn't like a shoulder to shoulder perimeter. They were mainly controlling the main routes and with checkpoints. And so, bypassing the Taliban, bypassing the U.S. military were part of our methodology to sneak people into the airport.
So you basically had to sneak them in, right?
We had to sneak them in, yes.
You had to sneak in 12,000 people?
It was pretty chaotic there. And so chaos in an environment like that can be your friend.
And you had to sneak in 12,000 people, but you had some very patriotic, heroic men and women in the military inside the airport who kind of knew what you were doing and said, all right, hurry up, get them in, something like that?
Yeah, some people, obviously, we can't say their names.
No.
We want to them. And then there's people on our team that I can't give them credit here, but we have such incredible people. By the way, we had 10 special operations guys who were involved in this to get that many people out. And not only did we get that many people out, I think one of the things I'm most proud of, and I think you will appreciate, is we didn't open a gate, flood people in, open a door of an airplane and stuff people in. We knew exactly who we were getting. We had a bona fides process, a 7-point authentication process, to make sure we were getting who we were going after, and we were not getting the wrong people. And so we did a very good job in due diligence and making sure through this 7-point authentication process, we were getting who we were going after and not some random Afghan people.
This is not only mind-boggling, it's remarkable. And what I mean by that is we have an entire bureaucracy, massive Department of State, which couldn't do what you did. That is, couldn't separate supporters from enemies, couldn't find a way to get them into the airport, making excuses left and right, and now have left Americans behind. And here you are, this band of patriots, most of you with significant military background or intelligence background and so forth. You decide, you know, we're going to get together. We're going to get some of these people out of here. We can't put up with this. And you get 12,000 out. Is the Biden administration counting your 12,000 among the 124,000? I'm just curious about that.
I don't know. I don't know that math or not. I know they've claimed some credit for other people's, but they've also, have not been happy about some of our efforts. I mean, you got to think we're counting for pretty much 10% of.
Let me ask you this: if the State Department had known exactly what you were doing, that could have been a problem for you, right? They may have thrown obstacles in front of you getting 12,000 people out of there. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're right, because the State Department has. They did not help with the backlog. I mean, so countries like we had 4,100 beds. We've ended up putting 8,911 people in those 4,100 beds. They couldn't take any more. Qatar filled up. Doha filled up. All these countries filled up. The State Department started calling places and telling them not to take any more people. So there was no place to bring these people. We were having to work around the State Department. At one point, I flew a plane load of Afghans to Albania. And if you look at my social media, I'm going live to get our support, because we need to support financially through SaveOurAllies.org. And so I have to tell people what we're doing. But I said, hey, I'm going to a place I can't say. Why would I not say Albania? It's not super secret. But I didn't want the State Department to get in front of us and stop us from being able to bring people. And I know a lot of humanitarian efforts were having to do the same thing, because there were instances where they were bringing people to, let's say, a country like Madagascar. I know this was the case when the State Department called and said, do not take these NGOs people into Madagascar, using their diplomatic power to shut down those avenues.
Why were they doing this, the State Department?
I can't say why. That's the big question I've been asking. I mean, why is there the plane you were talking about earlier in Mazar Sharif, where there's 6 planes and 300 people, and why isn't the State Department? There's Americans on those planes. Why is the State Department not allowing that plane? Didn't allow those planes to take off and let the Taliban have the manifest of the people on those planes? I can't explain that. My why goes back to all the way back, and I think you and I, why we left Afghanistan is the biggest place that we could point to, because we should have never left.
No, I agree. It was preposterous. I don't care. End a 20-year war. Well, now look what we have on our hands. We have a 100-year war on our hands, and it's a war that's out of our control right now. You have 2,500 non-combatant troops. You've got that airfield. You got Air Force. You got CIA operatives. You've got our contractors maintaining their helicopters. We give them air cover. We had basically neutralized that threat. People like you and your colleagues neutralized this threat. And if we could turn the clock back and say, we'll have 2,500, the Afghans will do most of the fighting, we'll have our air power, I would do that in 2 seconds, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Look, the biggest lie the American people have been conditioned to believe, and I believe Americans have been conditioned intentionally to believe this, is that we were in a 20-year war, that we were in endless war, that we had to pull out. There was no reason to pull out. The international community was all at Bagram Air Force Base participating. The Germans, the French, the Georgians, America, we were all participating to support the Afghan National Army to fight the Taliban on our own soil and keep terrorism there. Not to mention, we had the most strategic global location on the planet in today's current climate between Iraq, Iran, Russia, China, and we gave that up. It wasn't ours to give up. We didn't consult with the rest of the world to give it up. We didn't consult with the Afghan government to give it up. We forfeited it to our enemies, and now it's going to belong to China. It's going to belong to Russia. It's going to belong to Iran, and the greatest terrorism organization in the world today, the Taliban. And it wasn't ours to give up. And we said we did it because to end the 20-year war, while we had 2,500 to 4,000 troops there, what about the 80,000 in Japan? What about the 40,000 in Germany or the 30,000 in Korea? Why not bring those guys home? This was a lie based on the political, whatever economic reasons to move us out of Afghanistan. And if you think back of why did we do that, the only person that has anything to gain from that is China. China has always wanted those Hindu Kush mineral rights, the lithium in the mountains there. And I've been saying this for months, and people said I was a conspiracist for saying it. But on September 1st, the Taliban and China struck that deal to give them those mineral rights in the Hindu Kush mountains.
And you're so right. And the China connection's a big deal because people have been trying to Peter Schweizer and others to expose that China connection with the Biden family and so forth. But even that aside, fact is, we even have some of my friends and colleagues in various media platforms say, everyone agreed we should have gotten out. It's the way we get out. And I keep saying, excuse me, I didn't agree with that. What are you talking about? The way we got out was a disaster, of course. Yanked the military first and our citizens. We got that. It's the greatest blunder in American military history. Likely, I had a retired colonel, commander of British forces, right in the thick of it, Richard Kemp, on my show not long ago, and he said, this is the greatest military blunder since the end of World War II. And he agrees 100% with you. He said, that should never have happened. He said, don't tell me those Afghans wouldn't fight. 50,000 of them died in 7 years. And my answer to that has been, they weren't all shot in the back, you know.
For more, sign up for LevinTV.